What is up, Entrepreneur DNA family? As always, I have an incredible guest. Now, this guest is telling me that 2 + 2 = 4, and I want to make sure that I don't believe him emphatically. I don't know if that's scientific math yet. I rely on Bubba math, first of all. So, you can already see our dynamics is incredible. One of my closest friends, someone who I look up to as an advisor in the space, but also someone I can rely on as a close friend to be an ear and a shoulder. But also, you guys need to know he built the industry standard when it comes to a consulting business, well north of $30 million a year, and lost it all and got sued by the government and has now rebuilt it. Mr. Taylor Welch is here. What's up, dog?
Dude, that sounds really bad when you say it that way. And it was worse. But yeah, nice and triggering. Dude, we both became dads in like the same season as well. That's why we're kindred spirits. Because when you have kids, your whole life changes. You have to run everything different. In fact, that's why we're 30 minutes late on this podcast, because you have kids.
That is 100%. And I have a pregnant wife. And I had no veto power this morning. I said, honey, our boy Taylor is, and she says, I love Taylor. You wish him all my love, but you are going to take your child to school today.
Dude, I'm not going to battle your pregnant wife at all. I would have done whatever she asked. So.
That's pretty much what I did. I said, yes, honey, I will stop by Starbucks and get you your sausage, egg, and cheddar.
Good husband.
Not a big deal. But yes, to keep on the family thing, you have a little boy now. Obviously, your beautiful girl has been in our presence now for years, but now you have a beautiful boy who is a machine.
He's a dank.
He is.
Dude, they're so different, even from like early age. So Kate's 5. She's, like delicate drama princess, and so she plays with her toys like a normal human. Harrison plays with his toys by breaking them.
Aha.
He doesn't think that they're fun if he can't break them. And he's just hitting everything all the time. So the other day, I think I was telling you the story, like he jumped out of my lap and just hit the hardwood floor. And I was like, oh no, he's about to start screaming. And he climbed up and then did it again. And I was like, this is definitely a boy. Very different.
Very. And you're someone I come to because I have a girl, the princess, the drama, the feelings. And I'm having a boy coming up. And so I talk to you a lot about that because it'll be a different parenting. Do you feel like you're different father to Kate than you are to Harrison? Do you feel like
Yeah, because and I think part of this is personality, but with Kate, probably like your daughter, if I just am like, no, we don't do that, that's pretty much enough. She kind of is like, daddy's upset with me. Harrison, you have to haul out, like slap him, hit his hand. Like he just doesn't feel the same. He thinks saying no is like a game.
Joke.
It's a joke. Yeah. And like, he doesn't, he's 1, so you can't like spank him per se, or like he's a baby. He doesn't understand, but he thinks it's funny when you slap his hand. So if you're slapping his hand to like, don't touch the oven, he laughs and wants to touch it again. And it's like, okay, dude, we gotta work on it. Like,
I firmly believe, and you have definitely you've progressed more than most men, but I don't know if we change a whole lot, no matter how many years we have. Call it 4, call it 40.
Dude, you know what happens though is society programs us to behave in our little box, but it never really goes away. Like that drive to explore, it's always there, but I do think men have become pretty emasculated, especially in our society, where it's like, man, why you're so afraid of losing? You're just weak at this point. And I want to be that dad that's like, I want my kids to know that when you mess up or when you fail, that just teaches you how to do it better the next time. And so even with my daughter, we're trying to program that right now because she's in school and she's like, I didn't know how to spell something and I can't spell. And it's like, well, that's good. That's awesome. And she kind of is confused by that. And it's like, it's awesome when you don't know how to do something because that's when you get to learn how to do it.
That's
right.
It's
this cool like opportunity as a dad to train our kids how to grow up and be entrepreneurs and take risks and not be afraid to lose. And man, we've lost that as a society, I think, for the most part.
I would tend to agree. I mean, I think we have mutual friends that kind of speak to that point that many have followed and will be on this podcast. But I think there's a tendency to just play mediocre. Our friend Kent, who was just on this podcast, right? Mediocrity is the enemy.
Ken Clothier.
Yep. And that's it. Is because everyone kind of is just okay. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to fail. And this whole thing goes back, in my opinion, especially in the last decade or so, just the fear of the judgment from friends, families, the ridicule, and it's just nonsense. And it's unfortunate. It is true. The reality is here now that social media and all the other things, but you're right. I mean, if we can empower our kids to be excited to fail to some extent, right, within reason, then it gives them the opportunity to learn. And listen, you as a friend have come to me years ago just about, hey, dude, this loss that you just took was a blessing, right? Because now you're able to pivot and learn from it. And the same thing is true as an adult, right? Like if you're not playing all out and you're not going for it, I'm going to make the argument you're really not trying hard enough. And a lot of that is because you're scared of X, Y, and Z, and you're just going to play mediocre.
Yeah. There's this really interesting, I flew out to speak at an event last summer, and they wanted me to talk about failure. So there's this interesting idea in biology called Mithridatism, Mithradatism, I think is how you spell it.
Big one. That was a big one.
Mithridatism. But it's this idea that the number one hedge against decline is actually decline in small doses. The number one hedge against failure is failure in small doses. This is how vaccines work. This is how the immune system works. But it's the same in business and in life. When we are, if you want to be not insecure anymore, you have to actually have exposure to situations that make you feel insecure to beat it. So it's actually a form of exposure therapy. And one of the things that happened to me is I got the unfortunate experience of everything I touched worked for like 10 years. And when, like, that doesn't sound unfortunate. That sounds great. That's like, oh, yeah, Midas touch. But when I experienced failure for the first time, I had no data for how to deal with failure. My first business hit 8 figures. My second business hit 8 figures. My third business hit 8 figures. My fourth business was about to hit 8 figures. And then it didn't. And I was like, whoa, like the economy must have collapsed. Like I must be losing my marbles. And I hired a mindset coach. And I'll never forget this conversation. She was like, she spoke to me for like five minutes. And she works with hedge funds and real estate gurus and big people. And she was like, your problem is that you forgot what it's like to fail. And now you have no idea how to deal with failure. And so I think that when you look at an entrepreneur's life, every 10 years-ish, like 10 to 12 years, you're going to have 3 to 4 years that are really, really good. And you're going to have 3 to 4 years that are sort of average. They're just okay. And then you're going to have like 2 to 4 years that are like legitimately trying to physically kill you.
Mind, body, soul, and spirit. The whole thing.
It's just a clock. It just rotates. And what happened to me was the worst case scenario where it's like the first 4 years were amazing. And then there was some mediocrity. But then my failures were clustered in like a 2 to 3 year period. And so I had 2 personal black swan cataclysmic events. I had one macro, like obviously COVID, with how that affected all of our businesses. Sure. And so when you look at the last 2 or 3 years, it's been 3 black swan events, bam, 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 bam. And I learned how to fight the last 3 years. It was really, really insane.
The analogy is great for life, but what I like about that is the understanding of like, if you don't have the minor failures, you're not going to have resiliency. And you personally, knowing you could have went under for the big black swan event. Like you could easily checked out and said, I'm out. I'm going to go cut hair with my wife. I have beautiful hair. I'll cut some. And you could have easily. And no one would have blamed you because that's how big of a like, oh, fuck scenario you were in. Right. And what I credit you is not just not doing that, but taking some time. And I remember, you know, me and your dad would talk about, you were, what would we call it when you were on like reprieve or whatever? Like you'd have a 30-day, like, I'm just not going to talk to anybody.
Oh yeah. Sabbaticals.
And I credit you for that, because that type of personal time, that ability to kind of recharge. And I know you, and look at your library behind you, I know you just sat there reading and thinking. People don't do that enough. When they hit a little failure, a little one, like not on levels that you and I have achieved or nowhere near what you've achieved in terms of getting hit, it like breaks them because they're just not used to it. Even the littlest ones. And they don't sit and breathe and think and accept it and say, okay, how can I do better next time? They just crumble and they think it's over and they quit. Yeah. On the little ones, right? And again, in my world of real estate, you go lose 10 grand on a flip. I get that 10 grand is a lot of money. It's not like I make so much I don't want 10 grand, but relative to losses like you're seeing in some of the news now with these commercial buildings defaulting on $400 million worth of loans. I mean, what is 10 grand, right? But it gives you perspective to say, if you are going and having these minor failures, it gives you a time to reset each and every one of those failures. So God bless the day you ever have really a hit. You have some shielding against it, an ability to like rebound, just like you said, the immune system, right? If you get little sicknesses over time, your immune system builds off of it. Same thing with failure. And so I love what I think it was even today you posted something, since I was up at 4:30 hitting the gym, whatever.
Hey boy, let's go.
I think you posted something about these minor failures, and it hits, dude. That it is what people need to hear is take some of these L's and don't make them big L's, but take some along the way.
Dude, there's the podcast that we do called Daily Mind Medicine, and we release it every day. It's like 5 minutes a day. What's funny is we stopped this and we started it up again because I wanted to test it on a new feed. It's like in marketing, like with especially digital, like we're like tracking everything. And I was like, I want to see if people actually want this. So we stopped the main show. We just started it sort of in secret on another podcast line, which is about the stupidest thing you can do if you're trying to grow a podcast. And what happened is like the market just followed the new feed. I think I only posted about it one time. So I was telling you about this, like, you know, the main show is like 100,000 downloads a month. Well, now this secondary small feed did like 40,000 downloads last month, and it's its second month. And
just for my curiosity, when you mean feed, are you talking like Libsyn versus Simplecast, or what do you mean by that?
It's like a brand new podcast. So we use Captivate for it, but it's like Libsyn.
Sure.
But what it shows me is that the market is sharing it, so they're just following it around.
Yep.
But we're releasing an episode, I think, in 2 or 3 days, and it's kind of interesting because I was reading one of my favorite books called the Bible, and the Bible is basically just like it's a business book. If you really, it's how the human existence is supposed to work. And there's this verse in Matthew where it basically said, like, Jesus was led into the wilderness to reveal his strength to the enemy. And I was like, hold up a minute. That doesn't make any sense. So first of all, you don't want to be in a wilderness. There's no water. There's no food. There's no business out there. Like, you're just by yourself. But then why would he say that he was led to the wilderness to reveal his strength? And I had to think about it. And I had this aha moment, like this sort of revelation. People like to flex at the top, but the real flex is at the bottom.
Uh-huh.
That's when you flex. Is when it's easier to quit than it is to keep going. That's when your flex is. And this has a revealing function to the universe, the world, the resistance, whatever people call it. And I was like, you know, what I've trained myself is actually to enjoy that. Dan Martell calls it the pain cave. And as you feel it in the gym, you feel it in business, you feel it in investing. If you can learn that the moment to flex is when there is massive resistance and no one around to save you. That's when you flex. And your greatest flex is just not quitting at the bottom. Mm-hmm. So there was a period of 3 or 4 months where I was like talking to my wife. I'm like, babe, let's just sell everything. We have more than enough assets. Yeah. And let's just move to the country, buy 1,000 acres, put a solar roof up on that thing, and just disappear. And my wife was actually like, "Is that what you're called to do?" And I was like, "God, shit, you're right. No,
Lindsay's great.
We're not gonna play that game. You know,
Yeah, it's playing small,
playing small.
meager.
And then when you play small once, it's harder to play big the next time.
Yeah,
you know."
Well, and this is, why I made the intro I made that maybe you didn't love, but it's true and it's honest. And I give you the credit to be able to not just bounce back in the way you have. And we can get into the story for everyone who's like, what the hell happened to this guy, Taylor? But, I mean, you have the King is Back, I think, daily or weekly or monthly thing you do. The Wealthy Consultant book is top of the charts consistently, day in, week in, month in, all the time. You have another book coming out, but you've repurposed yourself to some extent. You've rebranded yourself to some extent. You've rebuilt yourself to some extent. And that is really what it becomes about, is making pivots, adjusting in different iterations of what has worked and strip away the stuff that didn't work.
Yeah.
And I give you a whole lot of credit to be man enough and listen to your wife, by the way, that's good.
Oh,
because she's dead on. Was that really what you were called to do? And you specifically were not, my friend. You are a light when it is dark, and you have the ability to lead a lot of people in business, but also in thought and in spirit. And so, I give you the credit because, kind of diving into the story, you built this 30, 40, $50 million a year company, and the FTC came a knocking.
Yeah. So we started, this is a company called Traffic and Funnels. People can look it up. It doesn't exist anymore, but at one point we had 200 staff inside the portfolio. I mean, you saw our offices, you come in, it's just sprawling and packed. And I started in 2015. We started taking clients, and it just grew, and it was a good product. We started doing consulting, me and my old business partner. So yeah, we got to the peak of this organization, and we were acquisition kings. Like we could buy customers for cheap, a couple 100,000 customers. These are a couple 100,000 credit cards, not leads. Millions of leads were coming in the organization on a yearly basis, and it became at a certain level, it became fatiguing for me, because when you don't exactly know what you want to build, and you're just chasing scale, if that scale is not put into a bucket, so to speak, of like, what does this actually do for my next thing? I think Hormozy was before he started his podcast, we were talking about this, and he was like, the game behind the game. That's what entrepreneurs are actually chasing. The main game is not the business. The main game is, what does the business do for you? And I didn't know what that game was, so I was just growing for the sake of growing. We had such a large pool of customers and clients that someone started building a multi-level marketing pyramid thing inside of one of our client groups.
Wow.
I haven't told you all the details.
You have not.
Let's unpack that for a minute.
Hey, by the way, if you're an entrepreneur, if you do hard things, big things, a friend of mine, Taylor Welch, has one of the best podcasts out called Daily Mind Medicine. If you want to supercharge your thinking, your resilience, your problem solving, everything from how you do more and get more done to how you handle failure. You know this, but your number one asset is your mind. Bar none, nothing else compares. The reason I love this podcast is because it's only 3 to 4 minutes long, so I grab my cup of coffee and I get my mind right every morning. You should absolutely check this out. Go to dailymindmedicine.tv or just look on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It's like a nootropic for your brain. Enjoy.
So we had a sales training organization. There were about 50 to 60,000 clients in that sales organization.
And just for purpose of everyone understanding how massive that is, what was the price point?
They came in for like $100 to $200, and then they would escalate all the way up to like 10 or 12K.
So just do the numbers, everybody. You can see what he built, right? If you just do those simple numbers on that one silo, that's one of his silos.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
One of four. And it grew really fast. And when something grows really fast, like out of control fast, you struggle sometimes with like hanging on to it. So it's not just the building the thing. It's like you got to sort of be able to hang on to it so it doesn't run away from you. And we were struggling really to hang on to it because there were so many clients coming in that keeping track of everyone and delivering the service was a challenge. So we fixed the operations, but then we started noticing people were emailing in and they were like, "Hey, I bought this thing from you guys," and then you disappeared. And we're like, "Okay, well that's not like us. What did you buy?" They're like, "Oh, it's this 5K thing." We're like, "We don't have anything for 5K. What did you buy? Send us everything that you bought." And it was some random dude in Facebook Messenger being like, "Hey, I work for Sales Mentor, and I have a guaranteed job for you, and it's 5K." And so we would find this person, we would ban them and eliminate them, but then it kept happening. And then there were like dozens of these people. They were all in our client groups selling this fake product that had no affiliation with our company. And so we had to basically go on like lockdown with the groups. And then we got a letter from an attorney general from Washington State.
That is fun.
That was a great day. Yeah. And they were investigating this pyramid scheme inside of the company. And so we had to send a bunch of data. We won that case because it wasn't us. And it just kind of kept happening. And I'm not going to share the
once
name.
They kind of crack the door open, then it gives them an opportunity to say, okay, what if this is happening, what else is there? Is that kind of how that all transpired? Is the AG poked a hole in it, and then there's a hole, so everyone starts to look through the hole?
That and clients of ours had bought this thing, and so they were in there because the way that this guaranteed job worked is they would pay $5,000, and then the way they made money is they would sell that 5K package to other clients of ours.
So it was like a multi-level, like
legit multi-level. Yeah. So in our own group, we had clients coming in who were like, "Well, how do we get rid of it? We have to refund the client to get rid of them." They didn't know that it was us, and we finally got it under control, and we ended up moving on. Like, I ended up transitioning out. I felt like God wanted me to do something different. And so I moved on, parted ways. And about a month after I moved on, we got a letter from the Federal Trade Commission. And they wanted to know who this person was. And there were probably hundreds of complaints that had made its way up to the FTC from this guy.
I was just going to say, for those that don't know, the Federal Trade Commission, otherwise known as the FTC.
They're the big dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not who you want to tangle with. So at the very beginning when that first started, I was like, this is just a misunderstanding like the AG, and we'll just be able to put it to bed. And so we spent the first 60 days like proving that we weren't this person. They didn't work for us. We had nothing to do with it. And they were like, cool. Well, we're going to subpoena everything you've ever done.
And you're like, well, cool. All right.
I was like, I don't even own these businesses anymore. And they were like, it doesn't matter. You were involved. And so
we did, right?
Yeah. So they originally subpoenaed like 700,000 sales calls and 30,000 individual ads, all the data in the businesses. And you got to understand, like, we weren't just some like put a random offer together business. Like, we kept data on clients. We had data on millions of people, and they wanted all of it. And I learned in hindsight too, sometimes the way that their investigations work, they're tracking other targets and they know where they came from. And so they'll subpoena the source to kind of get the information on the other target. And so
almost like in a drug thing where they go after the low hanging fruit to try to make them turn on the higher.
Yeah. So we were the gatekeepers.
You're the low hanging fruit because they wanted something bigger or different that came through your world, right?
100%. So we were like, look, we can't. At one point, this was in like the early 2023. We were like, look, we figured out a solution to get you 700,000 calls. We'll put 2 VAs full time on our CRM, and all they'll do 40 hours a week is they'll download calls and they'll send them to you. And we'll be done in 12 years, full time.
That is wild.
That's how many calls we had. And they were like, no, just send us, I think 30,000, like randomize it. We send them 30,000 calls. And we had to prove everything. We had to prove every claim that I ever made. We had to prove they had Facebook posts and social media content. They had everything. And once they got into it, it then became about like, how much money do you have? What are your assets? What can we pull out of this? And we finally kind of had to get to a place where we just settled to move on.
Well, from my understanding, because of you and a couple other people that we are both aware of that have gone through it or going through it, I mean, there's a real agenda for they want money. They're coming to collect it, period.
They do good things, so they do go after legit scammers. But sometimes that line is like, they're in this investigation now, and they've spent resources to like subpoena everything. And now it's like, well, we have to get something from this and at least make a statement. So we got to the table and we started negotiating settlement. And they were like, we would like everything your business has ever generated in revenue. Bro,
you said, no, I would like everything my business has ever generated in revenue too.
Yeah, I was like, that's not really how it works. Like they're like, where'd the money go? We're like, people, humans.
Yeah.
Operations to running a business. And even with like, so I got really into estate protection and trusts and permanent insurance and all this stuff, like pretty much locked down. But with the government, they're the ones that create all of that. So they're like, yeah, we'll just undo it.
You're like, sweet.
So I was like, I called my attorneys. This is like the summer of 2023. I was like, what's the worst case scenario here? Because we didn't do anything wrong. And I've spent at that point, $300,000 on attorney fees. Just not even defending myself, just hiring an attorney to explain accrual finance to the government. Like basic stuff. And they're like, worst case scenario. By the way, never ask an attorney worst case scenario.
Because they'll give it to you. That's like looking, you have a scratch in your throat and you look up on Google. What does a scratch in my throat mean? Yeah. Oh, I have brain cancer. Perfect.
Oh, yeah, got it. Exactly. Great. I'm going to die. So just give everything away.
Yeah.
And that attorney was like, well, real worst case scenario is like they want your house, so they take it. And they want your cars, and they take it. And then they ban you from ever doing business again. And I was like, whoa, this is bad. He's like, really, really bad. So we go back to the table to negotiate, and we're like, we can't do that. We don't have $70 million sitting around. We don't have $17 million sitting around. Like we have assets that are liquid and all this stuff. And they're like, cool, well, we're just going to sue you. We'll just see what you got in court. And I had to kind of get to that place mentally where I was like, even if they take everything away, I have to trust my ability to start over and be okay. And my wife one day, she was like, I don't really care. Like, if we have to live in an apartment, we're going to be fine. And that was a moment for me where I was like, all right, we'll be fine.
Let's go. Well, I had it not quite as extreme as yours, but my big loss, me and my wife had the same conversation. There's something about a woman who will sit there and look you dead in the eye and say, we're going to be fine. Go get a studio apartment for us and we're going to be fine. I'm going to support you and we'll make it happen. And for me, just so you know, it triggered something inside me of a hunger and I always talk about like being a lion and being able to provide for your pride and your tribe and hunt and, provide. Like that moment really kind of triggered that thing because I knew I had her support. And it was just, it really became like, now there really is no limit. I can go as big and as far as I want because I have the support of her to say, the alternative is live in a studio apartment for $800 a month and she's into that. Well, let's just go fucking win then and go for it.
Yeah. So that was like a good turning point for me. And then they came back and they were like, okay, no, we're going to settle. We're not going to sue you. And we worked out the math, and the math was like not based on anything that we did or didn't do. It was based on my net worth. They basically poured over everything. There are some things that you can't touch, like permanent insurance is never going to be cracked open. If you crack open permanent insurance, every politician goes bankrupt tomorrow.
You're talking about life insurance?
Yep, like whole life, things like that. So there are things that are like really well hedged. Trusts make it difficult, but they're not like 100% foolproof. So they finally got to the settlement table, and then my attorneys were like, "Okay, so here's what you need to be prepared for next. They're going to drag your name through the mud, because if they can't win if they can't get like a monetary type of thing, then it's going to be like a moral victory. Like, oh, we saved the market from these horrible scammers."
Sure.
So then the next phase started where I was like, dude, you have one reputation. Yeah. And I'm about to lose mine.
Yep.
It's like, and I'm about to lose mine unfairly. It's not even fair.
Yeah.
If you do something
you didn't
wrong,
even
like,
do the things that are, yeah, for sure.
Like you look at stories of Jordan Belfort and people that have just, they made mistakes, they made errors, and they paid for it, and they came back.
Yeah.
Like, that's one thing. But then to like have to come back from something that you didn't even do, that was another hurdle for me to get over. And yeah, that was intense, man, because if you go look up, I think everyone should look up the press release. It's like it reads like a child's pop-up fiction book where it's just like not even it's insane. It's crazy. So I had to go through that and make my own press release and all this stuff. But what's interesting is that the thing I was afraid of from a reputation standpoint, it did the opposite. People were like, "Whoa, dude, you've been through this shit. Teach me how to avoid that." It almost created battle scars that made my reputation stronger. And what I learned from everything at the end of the day is that everything that comes from life is actually a benefit for us if we look at it the right way. It's a cliche saying like things don't happen to you, they happen for you. Yeah. You can't see that in the moment, but in hindsight, when you look back, I was like, yo, this was great. This was awesome. Like, this is actually exactly what kind of set me apart, so to speak, inside of my space.
Well, there's
2 months ago.
Yeah, but there's so much to unpack, and just for the sake of time, we can't, because I know you so well. But like, you weren't built wrong by any means, but I think you were built in a way that wasn't best for you. Like, there's no right, is what I'm trying to say, but there's right for you. In the way you are currently built, ultimately, in the big picture, in the macro, was not right for Taylor Welch. Right? It was right and did a lot of good. But right for you is what you've now rebuilt and continue to produce with what you have going on. And you and I have talked at length about it. And I tell you, one of the things that you said to me 6 months ago, if that is, it is all about your reputation, your brand, making sure you are branded. So that reputation thing that you just talked about is really, really important. I don't want people to lose sight of that. But then to be able to create an ecosystem of branding, and there's just a flywheel, in your words, that everyone, everywhere, on all platforms is seeing you. And it just takes one little thing and you're back at it. Mm-hmm. And so let's just talk quickly about, like, how did you got knocked down. You did not get knocked out. You got back up. It was a very heavy financial cost. It was a very heavy emotional cost, heavy spiritual cost. But when getting back up, what do you think you relied on? Or not think. What did you rely on? What did you go build? And what did you say, okay, if I'm doing this again, here's how I'm going to do it differently?
I wanted to not be in the acquisition business because when you look at what can be broken, if you have a concentration risk on any one thing, it's very easy for anybody to come in and disrupt you. So like, if you look at any of the big businesses who are like actually world-class, they usually have multiple sources of enterprise value, or moats, as like Warren Buffett would call them. And one of the things I realized is that if you scale on the acquisition side, you could die on the acquisition side. And so I started pivoting my approach to like, okay, dude, if I'm blocked from the ability to get new customers, what would I do? If I couldn't get new customers, if I couldn't acquire new clients, how would I monetize this brand? And I kind of settled on this idea of like, retention is actually superior to acquisition. Elon selling one Tesla doesn't make a difference. Not a difference. Like, what makes the difference for Tesla's enterprise value is the fact that people buy multiple Teslas. You can't compete with the supercharger network. You can't compete with the training that's going into the AI. There's so many different, equalizing functions inside of that brand that protect the value of the brand. So how do I take something like that and put it into consulting or coaching or info? And historically, the way you build an info business is you just write a book and you try to sell as many of them as you can. Or you get as many clients in a month as you can. But the way that I'm building our portfolio right now is we've actually created feedback loops inside of the system so that we can see how long people stay and why they leave. And so this company is that I'm running, the Wealthy Consultant, is growing really slow for me. I'm the guy that historically will go from 0 to 7 figures in 2 months, and then we'll go from 7 figures to 8 figures inside of a year. And this business is, $4 to $5 million a year and growing, but it's on its second year. And so it feels slower, but our retention on the back end is about 90%. It's 87%. And we've built everything so that it's very easy to leave based on a choice. So there's not like long-term contracts, but it's very difficult to replace. So think about what I just said. If it's easy to leave and difficult to replace, you have the cleanest set of data that you could possibly get. When it's hard to leave, you have faulty retention data. So the stickiness of a product is not the contracts that lock you into 12 months, 24, 36 months. The stickiness of a product is actually the replacement cost of the product. And so for consulting, when you can engineer a system where people are paying to be a part of an ongoing relationship, and that relationship is valuable enough that it's difficult to compete with or replace, you have a really clean set of data. We're doing the same thing on service. So the content agency, the web design agency, basically we've engineered the economics so that when someone comes in, they're buying an asset. So think about a car. When you buy a car, you put a down payment and then you pay monthly for it, right? We're used to paying both and. It's not just upfront. It's not just MRR. It's both and. So we have this new book that just released called Revolving Price, which kind of explains this thinking. And it teaches you how to put an onboarding and a revolving price component onto a consulting offer, and you build a book of business. And when you build a book of business, there's recurring revenue that comes in. And that multiple goes from 2x to 6x to 8x to 10x. Because when somebody's buying a book of business, you're buying a retention business, not an acquisition business. Mm-hmm. If you lose the marketer of an acquisition business, the business dies. Yep. If you lose the marketer in a retention business, nothing happens. It stays the same. So it's a safer, more dependable type of approach, even in the engineering of the pricing. But in the ecosystem approach on the front end, we have all of these different, and this plays into the economy as well. When liquidity is sucked out of the economy, which is happening right now, people take longer to make decisions. It's not that the money goes away. It's that if you spend $5 on $50,000 of liquidity, you can do that really quickly. If you spend $5 on $500 of liquidity, you're going to slow down that decision. And so conversion cycles go from, 24 hours to 6 months. Yep. And so we need to give people things to do during that decision-making period. So we kind of have pivoted around to like marketing's job is not to acquire the client. Marketing's job is to help the prospect do their own due diligence on the products.
Love that.
And so we have books for $3, books for $10. We have courses for $100, $200. We have events. We're an events business right now. So we're running 15 to 18 events a year. And it's not more work per se, but we're offering more things at lower prices so that the market can effectively compare. They're comparing a $1,000 event, which is cheap, to a $20,000 program, which seems do or die. It's very risky for them. So the more you can front load that cheaper front end of the funnel or of the ecosystem, then the faster the decisions happen on the back end. Let's just pause to make sure that that comes through okay.
Dude, that came through brilliantly. In fact, it was something I just introduced you to Jason because he is kind of the guy right now to help consultants like myself or yourself. Now, you are your own beast, but, others that don't have the skill set you have, right? Yeah. Because low ticket, what you're saying, I'm fully bought in as of the end of last year. I've spent some time with Grant, and his whole thing, everyone thinks he's some high ticket master. Bro, he is a low ticket master. His hats, his books, his $97 weekend course, it's all low ticket. And that's the ecosystem. And to your point, giving the market time to decide while making the decision, but getting them enough homework, if you will, or whatever, the decision becomes infinitely easier. And having more than one or two different things, it is clear as day. What books do you have out right now that people can go get, and where can they go get them?
I'm actually forwarding this to you right now, dude, because I don't think I've sent this to you. The new Revolving Price book. I just texted it to you.
You have not.
Yeah, I just texted it to you. So I just bought you a $3 book because we're real friends.
Dog. Real friends.
Look at us.
Real friends. I'll get you a $7 Starbucks.
Thank you. Look, you returned it double plus interest. Real estate king. I love that. We have The Wealthy Consultant. That's on Amazon, and we launched that last July. It's been on the #1 bestseller list for 3 different categories on Amazon since we launched it. We have Revolving Price that's not on Amazon. That's a direct. So like 80 years ago, there was a big market for pamphlets, like small little books. In fact, like the American Revolution was started because of pamphlets, if you think about it. The Federalist, like these are small, like ongoing types of newsletters, but they weren't newsletters. They were books. They were like pamphlets. They were quite dense. And the publishing arena killed this model because if you're going to go through the effort of putting together a bookstore, you don't want to sell a $3 thing. You want the book to be meaty, 200 pages. And so now we have this weird unintended consequence of a book that should be 10 pages and it's 200 pages. It's like 190 pages of bullshit and 10 pages of good. So we're actually, when you go through a time like this, the things that were working 4 years ago are not going to work right now, but the things that worked 50 years ago are working because we're in a macro correction, a micro correction that has turned into a macro correction. So we're publishing these small books that are like 50 pages. We've got another one coming out in April on offer building. This one that just came out is on Revolving Price. So how do you build a book of business rather than an acquisition chain? We're launching a new full-length book today called the Exceptional Experience. This is on client retention and our metrics. So NPS, client effort scores, how to actually onboard in a 90-day kind of running quarterly roadmap. And so it's a full-length book on how do you handle 100 plus clients at a time without them leaving. We've got a sales book that comes out in July. It's basically all my sales models. And so we have all this stuff that people can access. And if you go to Amazon, you can just search Taylor Welch and pull up The Wealthy Consultant. But inside of that, there's a lot of gifts, bonuses. There's an offer building training. So if people buy it, they can scan the QR code. It'll take you to a private link, put your email in, and you can download a lot of goodies from that. But the key here is that when you talk about flywheels, it's never just one thing. So momentum is like a wave. So when a wave goes up, it goes up and it crests and then it comes down. And that's like pretty basic. Like we're explaining just how basic things work. When you want to force the momentum of a business up, what you have to do is the wave goes up, but before it comes down, you've got another thing that's creating another wave. And then before that comes up, you've got another thing that's coming up. And if you plan right, what you get is you get like the Wealthy Consultant. This month is February when we're recording it. Record month in February. If we don't sell anything in March, we'll have a record month in March. Like no sales.
Just on the continuity?
Just on the continuity and collections.
Yeah.
That's where you want to be as a business. And where a lot of people are as a business is like, I've got to go sell X amount of clients to pay the burn. And so our burn for like the next 12 months is already covered based on the way we've set the business up. And part of that is this forcing function of like, there's so much stuff to pay attention to. The market is like a head on a swivel. They're just looking for wherever the thing is. Like right now, your podcasts, the market's looking at you because you've got momentum. And they're just like, I can't stop looking at Justin because he's got momentum.
Yeah.
You can force that through this continuous wave of launches. And so there's like a book every 2 months that people can buy until the end of the year. And in between all of that, we've got events that people can come to. And it just forces like gravity inside the middle of the market where everyone's like, yo, what's Taylor Welch doing? Like what?
Yep.
He seems like he's doing something all the time. And I'm not busy. You know, my working hours right now for the Wealthy Consultants, 25-ish hours a week. It's not crazy. But because it's planned the right way, there's all of these waves of momentum that people are getting in. And as long as the quality of the product is good, people just go, yo, I spent $3 for this. What the hell?
Yeah,
like
for sure. And you over-deliver. And when you over-deliver, they just keep wanting the other stuff. And essentially they get to the point where you have the high ticket. And it's because they bought 10 of your $3 books. And they're like, wow, if I can get this much out of $3 books, imagine what I can get working with actually Taylor. Right. And that's everything. I mean, it's something you really preach to me. And even this talking right now kind of re-edifies, like, I need 7, lower ticket, super high value things to be offering my world. Not 3.
Yeah. And there's different schools of thought. Some people are like, yo, just do one thing and push everything else out. Yeah. If you're a beginner, like if you don't know anything about what you're doing, I agree with that. Like do one thing and figure out how to do it well before you do the next thing.
Sure.
But for pros, like especially pros who are like, yo, I was doing really good 3 years ago and now I'm not. What's going on? This is part of the key. You have to fractionalize your offerings to match the market. So pricing in a down market, I don't know how much time we have. Just cut me off when you're bored. But
it's not bored. The listeners get bored. That's my problem.
Yeah. Pricing does 3 things. Pricing has an information function. So the price of something tells you the surplus of the good or service you're selling. Pricing has an incentivization function. So pricing incentivizes other people to come into the market. This is taking like a very advanced macroeconomic concept and turning it into like a 3-minute clip. Information, incentivization, and rationing. So pricing will ration the supply of a good. When you ration the supply, you're actually propping up the demand. So what happens, what's going on in real estate right now is actually the rationing function of pricing. So real estate single family can't crash because there's no houses.
Right.
We're rationed because permits are hard to get and it's difficult to build these things quick enough for the increase of demand. And when you look at a business that's selling information, you have to meet all 3 of these criteria.
Yep.
And it's not a 1, 2, 3, it's a loop. So it's a circle. Yep. And they all feed, because when you ration something, what do? You kick back into the information. It's telling you something about the market. When that is done, you go and incentivize new builders to come into the market and make money. We're taking the same concepts. We're putting it in information. The most valuable asset you have is your time. So you can't just lower the prices of your programs because then your rationing is removed. What you have to do is you have to build programs that sit inside the other 2 categories and make them available for cheaper so that the market can do their own due diligence.
I love that. I think I think people need to rewind that. Go rewatch that. If you're not watching this, go to justincolby.tv and rewatch this. But if you like even just a little bit of what Taylor just said, this is like a daily function for him. This is how he thinks, how he talks, how he educates. So I'd tell you, go find Taylor Welch on Instagram. I believe it's just straight up Taylor Welch, right? Or is it the Taylor Welch?
Yeah, Taylor A. Welch. And then Taylor A. Welch on Facebook. And then the podcast right now is, there's 2 of them, but Daily Mind Medicine is kind of like a daily, really fast dose. It's on podcast, Spotify. You can pull it up anywhere.
I love that, dude. Brother, thank you very much for coming on. I'm excited to see the king is back, if you will.
Let's go. Let's go.
Let's go. Go find this man. Anything he puts out, if you are in business, regardless of what vertical, you need to be digesting his information, whether it's books, pamphlets, podcasts. This man is an incredible business owner, incredible mind. Make sure you're following Taylor Welch. Appreciate it, bro.
Love you.
Love you too.